If you look out the window of a train passing through Oimachi, Tokyo, you just see, well, concrete, right? Concrete, asphalt, skyscrapers. It just looks like another bustling transit hub.
Yeah, completely. I mean, to the naked eye, it's just a blur of modern development.
Right, but according to this massive new ontological study we're looking at today, you are actually staring at a 400-year-old multi-dimensional shock absorber, and it was designed to essentially keep the city from tearing itself apart.
It really completely reframes the idea of a morning commute, doesn't it? Like the city
Mhm.
stops being just this collection of buildings and becomes this piece of active humming machinery.
It really does, and that structural mystery is exactly what we are exploring in today's deep dive. So we're looking at a highly unusual source document today. It's titled The Multidimensional Spatiotemporal Energy Orbit and Ontological Historical Research Report of Oimachi.
What a mouthful, I know.
Oh yeah, it's a very intimidating title. Now, usually urban history gives us, a timeline of dates or zoning laws, but this report decodes the hidden layers of the city by intertwining geology, ancient mythology, and surprisingly, quantum physics metaphors.
Which sounds incredibly dense, I mean, on the surface. But the core argument is actually very elegant. The report proposes that Oimachi's specific geography, the way it sits between a high plateau and the ocean, functions as a complex energy system.
Like an invisible circuit board almost.
Exactly. It suggests that certain historical landmarks aren't just there by accident. They were placed, either consciously or unconsciously, to manage the immense pressure of the city.
And our mission for this deep dive is to guide you, the listener, through 5 of these specific hidden historical gems in Oimachi. We want to decode how these sites act as vital nodes in this hidden network.
So to understand the whole system, we really need to start at the literal geographic top of our story, which is the edge of the Musashino cliff line.
Right, because topography is the engine for everything here. Oimachi sits right on this sharp boundary where the high, solid ground of the plateau drops down into the lower, wetter plains of Tokyo Bay.
Yeah, that gradient is everything. And anchored right at the top of that high ground is Kofukuji Temple, which is home to the Well of Oi.
And this well is actually where the whole area of Oimachi gets its name. Now, the official temple history presents this very, poetic myth from the year 1201.
Oh, yes, the shooting star story.
Exactly. So an exiled noble's wife was praying for a child. In a dream, she swallows a shooting star, and shortly after, she gives birth to a boy who grows up to be the famous monk Ryokai.
Right.
The story goes that at the exact moment of his birth, a miraculous spring burst forth from the roots of a nearby pine tree to, wash the baby.
It's a classic Avatar manifestation myth, really. You see this pattern globally in religious histories. A cosmic event, like a shooting star, signaling the divine entering the physical world.
Right. And if you actually visit this spot today as a tourist, the sensory experience almost makes you believe it. You walk past the main hall into the cemetery, and the shift is just jarring.
Oh, the temperature drop is wild.
It is. The roar of Tokyo traffic is instantly filtered out by these massive ancient trees. The temperature actually drops by about 3 to 4 degrees.
And sitting right there in the quiet shade of this 800-year-old ginkgo tree is this moss-covered, horizontal ancient well.
And apparently, that ginkgo tree used to be so massive it served as a physical navigation mark for fishermen out in Tokyo Bay.
Which is a brilliant example of a biological structure acting as an energy node.
Right.
I mean, the tree was functioning as a massive living antenna, emitting visual signals to guide people safely to the boundary of the cliff.
Okay, I have to unpack this for a second. Because while the tree acting as a lighthouse makes practical sense, the report challenges that beautiful 1201 shooting star myth pretty aggressively, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. It tears it apart.
Right. So is there actual historical evidence that this well was just magically created by a monk's birth?
This is where we hit a fascinating historiographical reality check. Because if we examine the Egishiki records, which are formal government records compiled in 907 AD, the name Oi is already explicitly mentioned as an official post station.
Wait, 907 AD? So and the name Oi existed a full 3 centuries before this miraculous monk was even born.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What the geological data in the report suggests is that this site was always what they call a telluric orifice.
A telluric orifice. What does that mean in practical terms?
It's a specific geological term for a deep, natural opening, where the high plateau's freshwater aquifer directly meets the saltwater boundary, so it naturally pushed water to the surface under high pressure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was a sacred, powerful natural anomaly long before the 12th century. The Kamakura era Buddhists didn't create the well, They simply co-opted an ancient, pre-existing water worship site.
Right, they layered the shooting star myth over the geology to legitimize their own religious authority in the region, so they essentially rebranded a geological pressure valve.
That's a perfect way to put it. They took the natural grounding point of the cliff and claimed it as their own.
That makes total sense for water, but if we're building this model of a city as a shock absorber, water is only half the battle. Tokyo has historically faced massive threats from fire and, volatile energy.
Which brings us to our second location. We move from the permanent, ancient anchor of the water well to a site defined by intense volatility, electricity, and bizarre spatial movement.
You're talking about the Oizawa Gongen Shrine. The history of this shrine is wild. For centuries, it was credited with protecting the local area from Edo period fires and even cholera outbreaks.
Right, and the locals believed it was guarded by Tengu, those powerful, winged supernatural spirits associated with the mountains.
Yeah, but then modern industrialization arrives. In 1910, a massive railway factory needs the land and the shrine just gets pushed out.
And it doesn't just stop there.
No. Over the decades, it's moved to a nearby temple, then it's relocated into an industrial factory yard, and finally, in 1988, it gets squeezed back into its current tiny location.
And squeezed is really putting it mildly.
It really is. If you visit today, the visual contrast is surreal. You step into this narrow, concrete gap wedged tightly between modern commercial high-rises. You can literally feel an air vortex swirling around you in the alley.
And your feet pick up the low-frequency vibrations from the Kihin-Tohoku train line right nearby.
Yes. Yet sitting there in the shadows is an icy stone hall built back in 1793. That single stone hall has survived every single relocation. Now, the report uses the concept of quantum locking to explain this, which sounds impressive, but break that down for me.
Sure.
How does a shrine protect an area if it keeps getting uprooted and moved around?
So the report models this using a framework of atomic saturation. Think of it like a USB hardware key.
Okay, a USB key.
Right. The physical land changed, the surrounding wooden buildings were demolished, and the spatial coordinates literally shifted across the city. But the dense atomic structure of that specific 1793 stone hall acted as the anchor.
Because it had been saturated by centuries of focused human belief and worship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It maintained the wave function of the shrine. The theory is that the stone structure ensured its core protective frequency remained locked, regardless of its physical drift across the grid.
So the stone hall is the actual software license that keeps the protective energy running. That's a wild concept. But here is where I get incredibly skeptical about the city planner's intentions.
Ah, the 1925 relocation.
Yes. The places this shrine drifted to, let's talk about 1925. This feels way too perfectly aligned to be an accident.
It is a staggering historical irony. Remember, the primary deity of this shrine, Zhao Gongen, is deeply associated with thunder, fire, and extreme electrical energy.
Right.
When the shrine was uprooted in 1925, it was relocated specifically onto the private factory grounds of Nippon Rika Kogyo.
A factory which manufactured electrical insulation and mica. I mean, are we really supposed to believe that an electrical insulation factory just coincidentally absorbed the local god of thunder and electricity?
It's a lot to swallow as a coincidence.
Were they actually doing this on purpose, or did they just need the land?
Well, the official zoning records just cite convenience. But the report argues this was a subconscious, or perhaps even highly conscious, act of industrial feng shui.
Wow.
Yeah, in the midst of heavy industrial expansion, dealing with dangerous manufacturing processes, the factory owners essentially installed a deity of lightning to metaphysically dampen and stabilize the dangerous electrical surges of their work.
That is just brilliant. We see the city trying to control natural water energy at the well, and then industrial energy with the wandering shrine.
But then there's the human element.
Exactly. What happens to the human biological energy when the city deliberately generates massive amounts of violence? How does the city absorb that kind of shock?
That leads us down from the high plateau straight to the edge of the water. To our third site, the Suzugamori Execution Grounds.
This is undoubtedly the darkest node in the Oimachi energy grid. It was established by the Tokugawa shogunate in 1651, right on the boundary between the land and the sea.
Over the course of 2 centuries, tens of thousands of people died here. The historical accounts are just brutal. Crucifixions, burning at the stake, decapitations.
The condemned would be marched down the national highway, and their families would say their final, agonizing goodbyes at the nearby Bridge of Tears. Then a mitabashi, which crosses the Takiagawa River just before the execution site.
The report applies a very striking quantum physics metaphor here. It describes Suzugamori as a wave function collapser.
A wave function collapser.
Yeah. If we view a human life as a wave of infinite possibilities, trajectories, and futures, this specific geographic node functioned as an absolute termination point.
Oh, I see.
The moment a prisoner crossed that river and stepped onto that ground, their probability of survival mathematically shrank to zero. The wave collapsed violently into a single point of death.
And visiting the site today, you can really feel the weight of that collapse. It sits right next to the roaring truck traffic of the Daiichi-Keihin National Highway. It is this tiny sliver of land, but the artifacts are still there.
It's very sobering.
Extremely. You can look into the dark, oily water of the neck-washing well. You can touch the original stone bases where the crucifixion poles were inserted. And the text notes that these stones remain unnaturally cold to the touch, even in the blazing heat of a Tokyo summer.
The sheer volume of fear and trauma released at this specific coordinate created what the report calls a massive trauma-lingering field.
Which makes sense given the history.
Right. And to prevent this chaotic, negative energy from traveling up the highway and infecting the political center of Edo, the authorities erected massive Buddhist monuments in 1698 and 1741. Stones carved with the Lotus Sutra.
Right.
The claim is that these monuments acted as metaphysical grounding wires to filter the energy.
Okay, I have to push back on this idea of metaphysical grounding wires and trauma fields. I mean, aren't we overcomplicating human grief here?
How so?
Weren't the shoguns just putting up Buddhist monuments because families were mourning at the Bridge of Tears? Why does this have to be an esoteric energy drain instead of just a basic cemetery monument?
It's a fair challenge. And if you only look at the modern municipal narrative, it leans heavily into that tragic human element of families parting ways. But the older, esoteric texts reveal a much darker layer.
Really? What did they say?
Well, the river crossing, the Takiagawa, didn't just mean a place to stand and meet for goodbyes. Historically, it was a subjugation boundary.
Wait, what does that mean?
Long before the execution grounds were built, bodies from shipwrecks would naturally wash up on this specific stretch of the shore. It was known as a place of heavy, negative spiritual energy from the sea.
So it was already associated with death before the shogunate ever executed anyone there.
Precisely. Ascetic monks used to stand at this exact riverbank to perform aggressive exorcisms against sea demons. The shogunate didn't just pick a random empty lot for their execution ground.
Oh, wow.
Yet they deliberately utilized a pre-existing spiritual quarantine zone. They leveraged a geographic feature that was already functioning as a drain for the city's worst karmic waste.
That drastically changes the perspective. They were funneling trauma into an existing drain. But if Suzugamori is about the sudden, violent collapse of life into death, how does the city balance that out?
Because if it's a living system, it needs a mechanism for slow, organic preservation to counter the decay.
Exactly. And that brings us to our fourth hidden gem, the 1658 Sendai Miso Brewery.
This represents a completely different kind of biological field within the city grid.
The story starts with the Date clan from Sendai. They had over 3,000 hardened samurai stationed down in Edo, and these warriors were incredibly homesick.
Especially for the food, right?
Yes, specifically for the salty red miso of their northern homeland. The sweeter miso of Tokyo just wasn't cutting it for them, so the clan built a massive brewery right there in the city.
And the amazing part is, today, the Yagi family still ferments miso in the exact same spot.
Using massive, traditional 30-koku cedar barrels right in the middle of modern Tokyo, it's an incredible industrial survival story.
It really is an essential sensory experience for anyone visiting.
Oh, definitely. You take a 10-minute walk from the station, you're surrounded by modern asphalt and apartment buildings, and suddenly you step into this heavy, black, Edo-style wooden storehouse.
The city noise practically vanishes.
Completely. It is replaced by the smell of fermenting soybeans, ancient cedar wood, a hint of sea breeze, and the metallic clink of traditional scales on the counter. But here's where it gets really interesting.
The report's theory on the microbes.
Yes. I need you to explain this. It claims that these fermenting microbes are effectively acting as a biological time machine, creating a low-entropy stasis pocket. How does a barrel of fermented beans physically resist the entropy of a modern metropolis?
It basically comes down to the continuous, unbroken biological cycle. Look at it this way. Tokyo is a high-entropy environment. Buildings are constantly demolished, concrete degrades, noise and heat are endlessly generated and dispersed.
It's a city defined by rapid change and decay.
Exactly. But inside those cedar barrels, billions of microbes are executing the exact same, highly ordered organic process they did 400 years ago. They are a closed loop of preservation.
So they're anchoring the space.
Yes, amidst the chaos of the city's hyperdevelopment, this specific plot of land maintains a stable, continuous pulse of organic life that has never been interrupted.
So while the city is violently tearing itself down and rebuilding inside the storehouse, time is basically standing still. And there is a fascinating piece of social psychology or social feng shui layered into this site too.
Yes, the balance of energies. Because this brewery was originally a massive military food factory designed to fuel 3,000 aggressive, isolated bachelor
A
warriors.
very volatile environment.
Right. But the physical property the brewery was built on also contains the grave of Takao Taiyu.
Who is one of the most famous, highly cultured female entertainers of the Edo period, which seems like an incredibly strange pairing for a military base.
It does, but the report suggests it was a brilliant, unspoken piece of psychological engineering. The planners were utilizing her extreme yin energy, soft, feminine, artistic, and cultured, to physically balance and neutralize the volatile, aggressive yang energy of those soldiers.
Wow. They anchored the raw biological fuel of the food with the calming spiritual energy of the land. The layers of intention in the city's layout are just astonishing.
It's incredibly deliberate.
We've seen how the city preserves itself over 400 years, but for our fifth and final site, we need to plunge much deeper. If we dig into the earth beneath Oimachi, we hit the ultimate memory bank. Deep time.
The Omori shell mounds. This takes us back thousands of years.
The discovery of this site is legendary. In 1877, an American zoologist named Edward S. Morse is sitting on a moving steam train. He happens to look out the window and he spots an ancient Jomon period shell mound that had been sliced open by the railway tracks.
And this site turned out to be a massive cache of shells and animal bones left by ancient humans who were trying to survive a sudden, brutal global cooling event.
It's widely considered the birthplace of modern archaeology in Japan.
Definitely.
Today, visitors can go to the Omori Shell Mounds Garden and walk down into a semi-underground exhibit to view a real cross-section of these compacted shells.
And there's this incredible tactile detail there, too.
Oh, yes. When the modern train roars by outside, you can literally feel the ground tremble, causing the ancient razor-sharp shells embedded in the dirt to subtly vibrate. It connects the past and present so viscerally.
It really does.
But I am stuck on one detail regarding the discovery. How does a guy on a speeding steam train spot a pile of ancient shells? The official story says it was just a keen eye and random luck, but the report implies something almost metaphysical.
Yes, it uses the term electromagnetic resonance.
Right. Hold on. Resonance between a zoologist's brain and clamshells, that borders on science fiction.
It certainly challenges traditional archaeology. But the report frames the calcium carbonate in the millions of discarded shells as an informational storage medium, essentially a biological hard drive.
Okay, a hard drive.
Yeah. These shells were deposited by desperate humans surviving a massive climate catastrophe, right?
Yeah.
So they represent a concentrated node of ancient survival stress.
I'm with you so far.
The theory posits that when the railway violently cut through the Earth, it cracked this hard drive open. Morse's neural frequencies, as a deeply focused observer of nature, momentarily resonated with the sudden broadcast of that ancient cache.
That is wild.
He didn't just see the shells, he tuned into the sudden release of geological memory.
I love the idea of the Earth acting as a hard drive. But of course, human ego immediately messes up the data retrieval.
Oh, without question. Once Morse realized the magnitude of what he found, he also learned that a prominent German scholar, von Siebold, was sniffing around the exact same area.
And that triggered a bitter, frantic academic turf war.
Exactly. Morse was so desperate to claim the glory that he rushed to publish his findings.
And because he rushed the publication, his mapping of the site was incredibly sloppy.
Horribly sloppy. He completely misidentified the borders of the excavation. As a direct result of his haste, today there are two completely separate monuments located in two different city wards, one in Shinagawa and one in Ota.
And both monuments fiercely claim to be the definitive true site of the discovery.
Yes, they do.
So bringing all of this together, we've examined a 12th century water well, a wandering shrine, a brutal execution ground, a 400-year-old miso brewery, and an ancient shell mound. If we synthesize all this, how does this structural model, this idea of the city as a shock absorber, actually work as a unified system?
The grand synthesis of the report is that Oimachi is a fully functioning Musashino cliff-line geoelectrical shock absorber.
Okay.
The temples and shrines at the high ground act as the positive anchors, utilizing natural geology to project order. At the lowest topographical point, down by the water, the execution grounds act as the necessary drain, filtering and grounding the negative chaotic energy generated by the society above.
And the ones in between.
Right, in the middle of this gradient, the miso brewery and the shell mounds serve as the biological and historical buffers, maintaining a deep time memory that resists the rapid decay of the modern surface.
It is a profoundly beautiful way to look at human geography. Every hill, every ancient tree, every strangely placed factory or shrine is functioning as an invisible pressure release valve.
It really invites you to look at your own hometown differently, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That weirdly shaped intersection you drive past. Or that one historic building stubbornly sandwiched between skyscrapers. They might be playing a structural role in your city's survival that you simply cannot see.
A city isn't just a place where things happen. It is an organism that actively processes the history happening within it.
It really is. And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. Remember those two competing Omori shell mound monuments we just discussed? The ones separated by an academic turf war?
Yes, the ones sitting in different municipal wards.
Right. Well, if you map them out, they're located exactly 300 meters apart. Now, traditional history tells us that this 300-meter physical gap is just a remnant of Morse's administrative mapping error.
That's the official story, yeah.
But the report suggests a much darker reality. That gap represents a total historical void. The true core of the ancient Jomon site, the most vital part of that ancient calcium hard drive, wasn't protected by either monument.
Because it was right in the middle.
Exactly. It was situated right between them, which means it was likely completely pulverized, ground into dust, and lost forever beneath the railway tracks during the modernization of the Meiji era.
Oh, wow.
The two monuments tourists visit today aren't the actual site at all. They are just the shadows of a deleted file.
It is a haunting reminder that in our rush to build the future, we often pave right over the core of our past.
We really do. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden architecture of Oimachi. Next time you're staring out the window on a busy commute, remember, you aren't just looking at asphalt and buildings. You're traveling through a multidimensional energy grid. Go out, observe the anomalies, and try to read the hidden layers of your own city.